שיר המעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי. עזרי מעם אדוני, עושה שמיים וארץ. אל יתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומריך. הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל. אדוני שומרך, אדוני צילך על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה. אדוני ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם.
אשא אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי. עזרי מעם אדוני, עושה שמיים וארץ. אל יתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל. אדוני שומרך, אדוני צילך על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה. אדוני ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם.
Kol omer krav amar ma'akra. Kol habasar chatzir, v'chol chasto ketzitz hasadeh. Yavesh chatzir, novel tzitz ki ruach Adonai nashva bo. Achen chatzir ha'am. Yavesh chatzir, novel tzitz, udevar Eloheinu yakum liolam. A voice says, cry out. And I ask, what shall I cry? All flesh is like grass, and all of its beauty is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, and the flower fades when a wind from God blows upon it. Surely, therefore, people are like grass. The grass withers, and the flower fades. But the word of God endures forever. LeDavid mizmor ladonai haaretz umloah. Tevel v'yoshveva. Ki hu al yamim yisadav al nahorot yichoneneha. Mi ya'aleh bahar Adonai, u'mi yakum bimkom kadsho. Neki chapayim uvar levav asher lo nasa lashav nafshi, v'lo nishba lemirma. The earth is the Lord's with all of its fullness. The world is the Lord's with all of its inhabitants. Who may ascend the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in the holy place? She who has clean hands and a pure heart, she will receive a blessing from the Lord and a just reward from the God of deliverance. So Tali is telling me about the trip she took with Lil, and she mentions that Lil needed to use a walking stick. And I'm wondering what exactly is a walking stick, and I ask, what's a walking stick? And Tali says, no, it's a cane, but she didn't let us call it a cane. So we all had to call it a walking stick. And I said, that's exactly Lil. Because it may be a cane to the rest of the world, but a cane sounds old. And to your mom, it was a walking stick, and who cares what the rest of the world calls it? To the rest of the world, your mother had reached the definition of being an old lady. But that's not the way your mom saw herself. So she went to Israel and Petra with Tali. She went to Budapest with Joshua. And she came to the Minyan regularly, and she was a Minyaner of the Year, and she still dressed with style and with colors that were vibrant and funky, because that's who Lil Rubin was. Old lady, her mind was not like an old, it was sharp, and it absorbed everything going on around her. She never stopped wanting to learn. She never wanted to miss an opportunity for new learning and new experiences and new interaction. She had confidence in herself, optimism about all the things she still wanted to do in life. She had physically, yes, become more frail in appearance, more slight, more vulnerable, small. But she had a large presence and a strong will. Always had a strong will. Strong opinions, tough character. As a young girl, she had gone to New York several times, I know, every year for holidays and events. She had relatives there. She always maintained a bit of the New York accent, and dare I say, had some of the New York state of mind. She may have been a touch short, but she was never short on opinions. She was fiercely independent, always had been, in many ways ahead of her time. She earned a bachelor's degree before raising the two of you, but she wasn't done. After the two of you had grown, she earned 2 more degrees, 2 master's degrees, one in social work and one in education. Of course, she also taught kindergarten for many years while you two were growing up in the Cleveland public school system. Did a wonderful job. She taught Sunday school as well. She tried 3rd and 4th grade, I understand, for a short period of time, but she realized that the 4th graders were all taller than she was. And her tenure in that grade came to an end. Not that she was ever helpless in a room with people that might be a little taller than she was, which was most of the time. You, as her family, know that she would employ her greatest single weapon of intimidation, and that is the look. She didn't raise her voice, but she would shoot you that look. That meant, boy, are you in trouble. Amy and Deborah, you knew that look, and the grandchildren knew that look. With her eyes and her mouth, a combination of disdain and disappointment and sort of what in the world were you thinking? And that struck fear into the heart of many a mortal. This lady had very strong ideas in her head and a fire in her belly and true priorities in her life. Her family and her faith and education. All of these priorities got started when she was a young girl. She was close to both of her parents. It was an observant Jewish home. She enjoyed her childhood. She attended high school. She showed musical ability. Later, she played in the Cleveland Women's Symphony Group. On a blind date, she met Al, who was a regular bridge player, but who needed a 4th for bridge because I guess the regular participant canceled. They became bridge partners. They became life partners. And they had a great mutual respect for one another. And they shared a lot of the same values. Both were committed to Judaism. They worked well together. They believed in the community. They believed in service to the community. Your home was a kosher one growing up. You observed the holidays and other Jewish observances. Al was more quiet, and he married a very strong woman. And the relationship worked because, let's just say, Al said yes a lot. But he adored her. He respected her intelligence and her passion and her drive, and she had drive. She had a life force that really never left her. In addition to her teaching career and her family and her faith, she loved her work at the Natural History Museum. She was a docent there. She loved working there. She was interested in physical anthropology. She acquired knowledge and wanted to share it always. I think she served as a docent at the museum. I think she served as docent in your home also. She stressed what was important and how things were going to be. I know that Al brought home once a television set. It was to be your first. The other families in the neighborhood had purchased their first televisions, and it was becoming part of the American landscape. It was a nice thought, but it had not been cleared with the boss. The television went back to the store the next day, having never been touched and never plugged in. Because Lil didn't want you wasting time at the television. She wanted you using your own creativity and your own originality in reading and writing and relating to each other. It was her cultural statement that wouldn't hold back the floodgates because TVs were coming, whether Lil liked it or not. But it did show where her head was at. She didn't want people what she was thought would be wasting their time. She wanted people to be learning and advancing themselves. She was an original. Her clothing was her own statement. She remained a vibrant and a relevant figure into the next generations. her grandchildren and the friends of her grandchildren learned from her and welcomed conversation and interaction with her. I think that taking car trips as you did when you two were growing up every single summer as a family and visiting 48 states in America, and I know Lil got to 49, it was another form of learning, another way she wanted you to learn. She wanted to be productive, and she had a very impressive work ethic. She was, I know, also served as judge for a period of time in the Destination Imagination program, the problem-solving exercise participated in by the school children. She was ready for every experience, professionally and personally. Debbie, I know you moved away from Cleveland for a period of time, but you wanted your children to still benefit from the Cleveland schools. Your parents essentially raised Joshua for a period of years, and Micah as well. Lil was ready. Lil was born ready. I know when you went to an amusement park, Amy, you were saying your mom always wanted to get there early, first thing, because she wanted to get her money's worth. And honestly, I think that's a great metaphor for Lil's approach to life. She wanted to get her money's worth out of life. As a human being, she wanted to get her money's worth. She didn't want to be shortchanged as a human being. She didn't want to get shortchanged as a woman. She didn't want to get shortchanged as a mom. She didn't want to get shortchanged as a student or as a leader in the family. And as she grew older, no experience was foreign to her, nor no learning was rejected by her, no involvement was strange to her. She wanted to get her money's worth out of her life. I know services at Park, and especially later on the Minion at Park, was always important to her. Was important when Al was alive, continued when he passed. Her whole life, she helped to make the Minion. Saturday evenings, she used to help make the Minion, where Gotti gave her the alias Lily, which she continued to respond to for the rest of her life. She wanted her money's worth out of life. We all deserve it, but she wanted it, and she stood up for it. I know when Al passed, it was maybe her most difficult period. They were so tied together in their roles and their purpose. She took care of Al for 10 years as he became more and more needy, and it was difficult for her to transition after he passed. She would touch the memorial light for Al when she entered the Millard Chapel, which was the same place where she had been married. But she found her way because she never stopped seeking out new experiences. You do what you know to do in life, and Lil did what she knew was the only answer. She came back and she responded. She met new people. She lived her faith. We all only have a limited amount of time in life, and she used her time wisely. Finally, I know she was fond of shoes, and I know why. She had roads to cover, and she had journeys to make, and she had goals to reach, and she completed all of her journeys. As a proud Jew, and as a proud American, and as a proud woman, as a proud wife and mother and grandmother, great-grandmother, and as a proud human being, she lived with a good name, and she died with a good name. I want to ask Talia to come up with her brothers, with two of her brothers.
Six years ago, our beloved grandfather passed away. Just like today, the whole clan came from all different places and united as one. Just one difference. I was in London, England, studying abroad. I had about a month left of my program, but I was ready to hop on the next plane and come home. I'll never forget the conversation I had with my grandmother, basically begging her to let me come home. But in her mind, school and my education was more important, and that's what my grandfather would have wanted to interrupt. So of course, she won. During the time of the funeral, I sat in the basement of McDonald's in London with a friend from high school who was also studying abroad. In the end, she was right. While the last month was hard, and I just ached to come home, I learned a lot in that month, and not just from school. I learned how to overcome difficult obstacles on my own, learned how to be a strong individual, just like my grandmother. Determined, strong, and fashionable are the three words I chose to describe my grandmother. The one thing that all of us kids admired about her was her urge to travel, and that nothing ever seemed to stop her. When we were younger, my grandmother and my grandfather would take trips together often. Alaska, Egypt, a cruise to the Baltics, and Morocco, just a few places they visited. These are our tradition. And every place they went to, they would bring me back a unique doll. I was always excited for them to come home and hear all the stories, and of course to see what type of doll they picked me this time. About 5 years ago, I was living in Israel for a year teaching English, and my grandmother applied for a 2-week trip to the Jewish Federation. She spent the first 2 weeks in our sister city, Beit Shan, and then she extended her trip a week and spent it with me. She stayed in my apartment with me in Petah Tikva, and I showed her some of my favorite places. I remember being a bit nervous about her visit because I was used to walking everywhere, had to adjust things slightly to make it work for my grandmother. She visited the school I was teaching at, my Opon class, went to a Purim street party in Tel Aviv, visited her friend who became my family, visited another friend who stayed with my family a couple months earlier in Cleveland, and took a trip to Rosh Hanikra. My favorite memory, a visit to Petra in Jordan. But wait, our trip gets just a little bit more impressive. We went there and back in just one day. We spent the night at my friend's apartment in Tel Aviv. The apartment was on the 5th floor with no elevator. We got a 6 a.m. flight to the tiny Tel Aviv airport and flew an hour to Eilat. Met our little group, walked across the border into Jordan, and drove a couple hours in a van to Petra. My grandma was determined, with that walking stick of hers, to walk the whole windy, rocky path to the palace tomb. Everyone in our group Everyone in our group admired her determination and was impressed that she made it the whole way down. She wanted to experience it for herself, firsthand, in her own pace, and if she rode the cart down, she would have missed it all. She did agree to ride the donkey cart back up. We spent a couple hours exploring, and then drove 20 minutes and had dinner at this fancy restaurant. Then headed back to Eilat, flew back to Tel Aviv, then took a cab back to my apartment. It was an exhausting day, but worth every second.
My grandmother not only took care of us when we were growing up, she took care of her animals as well. She loved them like a child, none more so than Bailey. I remember going with my grandparents to the Geauga Humane Society to pick her out. I was so excited that my grandparents chose me to go with them and not one of my siblings. When I first saw her, Bailey that is, I knew I wanted her immediately. They took us to a room and let us play with her, and it was love at first kiss. I begged my grandmother to get her, but my grandmother, ever the realist, told me I had to be patient because there was another family ahead of us that might want her instead. The first few months were difficult. Bailey wasn't potty trained at all, and being a puppy, had a nasty habit of chewing things. All I kept hearing from my mom was how we needed to take her back and I had made an awful mistake, but my grandmother refused. She stood by my decision and couldn't stand the thought of putting an innocent creature out on the street. Although I grew out of claiming her as my dog simply because I picked her out, my grandmother never did. Bailey was loyal to her through my grandfather's decline and gave her something to care for after his passing. In time, Bailey grew old as well. And although my grandmother would never admit it, it saddened her to see her pass. Whenever anyone was sick or sad, Bailey would always be the first to offer her support, especially to my grandmother. She would often check in on her to see how she was doing, much like her current four-legged friends. It seemed that, in this way, Bailey was still with us and still with my grandmother.
Another tradition growing up was Shabbat dinners. We were also busy during the week between practices, homework, and other after-school activities, but we always made time together to come together for Shabbat dinner. When we were living in Cleveland, it was always our favorite time of week. Even my grandmother was busy during the week, except for Fridays, because she had to have time to cook dinner. She would go to the hairdresser in the morning and then start shopping, followed by the cooking. Her cooking was always beyond par, especially her homemade challah and a matzo ball soup. No one can make soup like Grandma can.
A big part of my grandmother's life was the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. She was a docent there and did a lot of work in paleontology, which is the study of bones. Every year, they would have a volunteer appreciation dinner that her and my grandfather, who was also a docent there, would attend. When he passed, she needed a new date, so she looked to us grandkids for help. Micah went one year, but then moved out of Cleveland, so Ty and I would switch off going. She was so proud to show off her grandkids to all of her museum buddies, and the open bar was always a bonus. People would come up to her and ask her who her dashing date was, or joke about having a new man in her life. Always amused, she would simply smile and explain that I was her grandson. She would then dive into a detailed explanation about whatever was going on in my life, no matter how big or small it may have been, because to her, it was important. She was incredibly loved and valued there, and they would always tell me just how special of a woman she was and how lucky I was to have her as my grandmother. Not that I ever needed any reminding of that.
She could have a meaningful and engaging conversation with anyone about anything. She was so knowledgeable about so many different topics, and you would always learn something new. All of our friends enjoyed having a conversation with her. The nurses at Ahuja and Monroe Park always took the time to comment on how lovely, kind, and fun she was to talk to and spend time with. She's also known for a sense of fashion. I have always loved talking with my mom and my grandmother. She always found stuff that I wanted to wear. She also loved jewelry and always had the funkiest earrings, including her favorite ones that never matched. Today, all the girls in my family are wearing a piece of her. Whether it's a dress, skirt, scarf, shoes, pin, necklace, or earrings. We will always continue to carry her with us, always and forever.
A grandmother is a remarkable woman. She's a wonderful combination of warmth and kindness, laughter and love. She overlooks our faults, encourages our dreams, and praises our every successes. A grandmother has the wisdom of a teacher, the sincerity of a true friend, and the tenderness of a mother. She's someone we admire, respect, and love very much. A grandmother will always have a cherished place in our memories and in our hearts. She's someone from who we want every happiness in return for the joy she always brings. Our grandmother was all the dear and precious things in life.
There was a bedtime saying in our family that's been passed down from generation to generation, something that we will all continue as well. One of our fondest memories of her is her telling us this every night before bed. Wake up in the morning, feeling fine and dandy, with God's help, because I get done.
So as the oldest grandchild, I was elected to go clean up, so. The first day of medical school, I'm sitting in the auditorium listening to the dean welcome us, congratulate us, and then inform everyone that to succeed in medicine, we would now have to become lifelong learners. This sentence struck me as odd. One, why was he telling a group of individuals who had just completed at least 16 years of formal education and who had voluntarily signed up for at least another 7 more years of education that they needed to become lifelong learners? And second, why was this just limited to success in medicine? Looking back, I know why the dean's words struck me as bizarre. I was raised under the watchful eye of Lillian Rubin. If there was ever a person who embodied the idea of a lifelong learner, it was my grandma. It wasn't just being curious about everything, and you can ask anyone here, she was. It was that she inherently understood to truly be a learner, you needed to turn around and share what you had learned. She was a teacher by profession, but being an educator was a part of her soul. Some grandmothers fill their retirement with knitting and bingo. My grandmother signed up to be a docent at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, and I think she racked up so many hours volunteering that they ran out of awards to give her. And she started attending Talmud and Torah classes. But for Grandma, learning wasn't confined to reading books in a classroom. Learning meant touching, tasting, seeing. It was an experiential activity that needed all of your senses. And to be a great teacher, you needed to be down in the mud with your students. So in honor of her role as a teacher and a student, I thought I would share a few of the lessons and stories that Grandma shared with me along the way. So when I was 11, I went with my grandparents on a golf vacation to a retirement community in Virginia. And I know what you're thinking, what's an 11-year-old doing on a golf vacation? But had I known I would have become a doctor, I would have spent a lot more time on that vacation working on my golf game. But unfortunately, I digress. We were eating dinner one night in the clubhouse, the first night, and the waiter informs us that there wasn't a kid menu. And Grandma looks at him without any hint of sarcasm in her face and says, "That's okay, he'll find something on the regular menu." Lesson 1 from Grandma: work with what you have, not with what you hope for. Immediately after graduating college, I hadn't gotten into medical school and was a bit adrift trying to figure out what my next step was. Grandma and I had a conversation about what I was doing, and I threw out there kind of every idea that was percolating through my head. At the end, I seemed to come back to the idea of reapplying for medical school. Grandma didn't say anything the entire time I talked, and at the end, she simply looked at me, smiled, and said, "I'm sure you'll make the right decision," and walked away. At the time, I thought, wow, Grandma, thanks for the profound advice. But I realized she meant it didn't matter what decision I made, just that I made one. Lesson 2 from Grandma. Failure is a step on every journey, not the destination. The morning after my wedding, everyone had gathered around for brunch and were counting tales of what happened the night before. And someone shows me a picture that they had taken at the after party. It was time-stamped 1 in the morning, and there was Grandma on a large silver chair, flanked by 2 attractive young males who were having an in-depth conversation. I didn't know who these people were, but later found out that a few of the single bridesmaids had invited the wedding bartenders back to the after party with dreams of some wedding romance. However, these 2 eligible young bachelors spent the rest of their evening chatting with my grandmother. I asked her what she talked to them about, and she simply said, their life. Lesson 3 from Grandma. Everyone has a story, and strangers aren't strange if you talk to them. I took my grandmother to Europe for her 90th birthday. I had given her the option. She had seen 49 states and was missing one, and we had initially thought about going to Hawaii, but then she decided she wanted to see where her family was from. She wanted to go back to Hungary and see Budapest. So I had traveled more recently, and I thought, here's my chance to show Grandma a thing or two. I'm trying to plan our activities, and I kept sending her lists of things to do and asking her to pick and rank what she wanted to do more than the other. And finally, after several weeks of pestering her, she looked at me and she said, "Joshua, I want to do as much as I can do. I've never been to any of these places before, so one is more than none." In a world of top 10 and bucket lists, here I was taken aback by this simple fact. One was more than none. Grandma's final lesson was, do what you can while you can, because at some point you won't be able to. Thank you, Grandma, for the life lessons.
Please rise.
Hey, malei rachamim, shochein b'meromim, hametzei menochanechon tachat kanfei ashchina, b'mahalot kedoshem odgorim, kazogar garakia mazgerim, et nishmat Leah bat Yehuda, Shechalecha le'olamam, Beganad hanetehai menuchata, Anabavalgara chamim, Astirai beseter knafecha le'olamim, Vetitzuror bitzuror chaim et nishmata, Adonai gonachalata, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר
Amen. May we remember all of the worthy and the righteous deeds that she performed while in the land of the living. May her soul be bound up in the bonds of eternal life. God is now her portion. May she rest in peace. And we all say amen. Let's be seated. Lillian is, of course, survived by her family, and we want to offer our condolences to Deborah and David, Amy and David, Joshua and Samantha, Micah, Talia, Noah, Michelle and Greg, Sharon and Tim, Becca, Eric and Alex, great-grandchildren Cora and Patrick, Rowan, Madeline, her sister. We want to note that the family will be receiving friends for the Shiva visitation at the Sterling residence in Beechwood. The address is on Hendon Road, 26610. Hendon Road in Beechwood, 26610 Hendon Road in Beechwood, beginning today following the burial portion of the service and continuing today until 8 p.m. tonight. Shiva will continue on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday It's a change from what was originally printed. Shiva continues beyond today, Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. Hours on those 4 days, 1 to 4 p.m., and again 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. We're going to break now in the service for a few moments to arrange the processional, which will take us to the burial spot. Please remain in your seats for another moment. The pallbearers, however, should now